We're all good.
Hello, I'd like to welcome you to our Internet for All webinar series. My name is Sarah Salgado, and I'm a broadband program specialist within the Office of Internet Connectivity and Growth at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or NTIA. I will be serving as today's moderator. Today, we will be discussing the top frequently asked questions of the Enabling Middle Mile Broadband Infrastructure Program application. Patrick Carroll, Broadband Program Specialist within the Middle Mile team, will provide an in-depth look at some of the top frequently asked questions ahead of the application deadline. We will then move into our moderated Q&A session. Pat and I will be joined by our Middle Mile Program Director, Sarah Blue, and our colleague at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. You can submit your questions at any time by entering them in the Q&A function on your Zoom module. So let's get started. Today's webinar is about the Middle Mile program, one of 4 high-speed internet programs administered by NTIA. Just as a refresher, the Enabling Middle Mile Broadband Infrastructure Program is a $1 billion program that was designed to expand middle mile infrastructure to reduce the cost of connecting unserved and underserved areas. As described in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, the objectives of this program are to encourage the expansion and extension of middle mile infrastructure to reduce the cost of connecting unserved and underserved areas to the backbone of the internet, and or promote broadband connection resiliency through the creation of alternative network connection paths that can be designed to prevent single points of failure on a broadband network. So first, middle mile infrastructure refers to the midsection of the internet infrastructure. This midsection carries large amounts of data at high speeds over long distances, bridging the backbone of the internet infrastructure to the last mile, which connects to end users. Second, this program is open to many eligible entities, including but not limited to government entities, native entities, utilities, companies, and nonprofits that provide internet services, or a partnership of 2 or more of these entities. Third, eligible entities can use grant funds in a variety of ways that contribute to middle mile expansion, including construction, improvement, or acquisition of facilities and equipment, engineering design, permitting and work-related projects, personnel costs, including salaries and benefits, and other costs necessary to complete the program's activities. So NTIA will only accept applications submitted electronically via its online application portal by September 30th, 2022. Applications must be submitted electronically through the application portal at grants.ntia.gov. And so just to repeat that again, that is grants.ntia.gov. If you have questions or are having trouble accessing the portal, please contact our team well in advance of September 30th. On the right hand of the slide, we have included a few reminders regarding formatting questions for application materials. Preparing application materials in accordance with these requirements will help ensure your application can be processed through the NTIA application portal and will help avoid delays in the review process. Today's webinar will focus on reviewing the top frequently asked questions, or FAQs, of the Middle Mile Grant Program. We will go over most asked general questions, eligibility and program detail questions, questions related to uses of funding, the review and scoring process, and lastly, questions around the application components and process. I'll now hand it over to Pat to address the top frequently asked questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, I'm Pat Carroll from the NTIA group, and I'm here to cover a number of the frequently asked questions we've had to date. What's the difference between environmental impact versus climate resilience? Environmental impact refers to the effect an infrastructure project will have on the physical service area, its surroundings when deployed, if the project includes construction or ground disturbing activities. Climate resilience refers to how applicants will account or design for current and future weather and climate risks to the infrastructure. What's open access and how is it related to the Middle Mile Grant Program? Open access refers to an arrangement in which the eligible entity offers non-discriminatory access and use of its network on a wholesale basis to other providers seeking to provide middle mile carriage using the eligible entity's funded network at just and reasonable wholesale rates. While the Middle Mile Grant Program applicants are not required to offer open access, their proposals may earn up to 10 points out of the 100 during merit review if they do commit to offering open access. And third, will middle mile funds be received upfront or via reimbursement? Unless otherwise stated in the specific award conditions, the advanced method of payment will be authorized, and non-federal entities must time advance payment requests so that federal funds are on hand for a maximum of 30 calendar days before being dispersed by the NFE for allowable award costs. Payments from Department of Commerce to recipients or pass-through entities will be made using Department of Treasury's Automated Standard Application for Payment, or ASAP system. Under the ASAP system, payments are made through pre-authorized electronic fund transfers directly to the recipient's bank account, not subrecipients. To receive payments under ASAP, recipients are required to enroll with the Department of Treasury Financial Management Service Regional Financial Centers, which allows them to use the online and voice response system method of withdrawing funds from their ASAP established accounts. Recipient requests payment via asap.gov, and approved payments can settle as quickly as the same day. Only the prime recipient may directly draw down federal award funds. In this connection, it's the primary recipient's responsibility to review subrecipient and vendor invoices and to make award payment to subrecipients and vendors. So now we'll cover eligibility and program details. What's the requirement for connections to anchor institutions in the Middle Mile Grant Program? Each recipient seeking an award to build middle mile infrastructure using fiber optic technology must certify that the proposed project, upon completion, will include direct interconnection facilities and will facilitate the provision of broadband services at speeds not less than 1 gig per second for downloads and 1 gig per second uploads for anchor institutions located within 1,000 feet of the middle mile infrastructure. What are in-kind contributions? In-kind contributions are non-cash donations of property, goods, or services that benefit a federally assisted project. In-kind contributions could include, consistent with federal cost principles, access to rights of way, pole attachments, conduits, easements, or access to other types of infrastructure. In many circumstances, in-kind contributions can be used to satisfy all or part of a federal match requirement. Recipients must comply with 2 CFR 200.306, cost sharing or matching. It's important to note that federal funds may not be used as non-federal match, except as expressly provided by federal statute. Can states or local governments use funding from American Rescue Plan Act, either state fiscal recovery dollars or capital project fund dollars, for the middle mile grant match? The answer is no. Federal funds, such as those stemming from the American Rescue Plan Act, may not be used to fulfill a non-federal match requirement, except where expressly permitted by law. The Infrastructure Act provides that certain federal program funding may be used to satisfy the match requirement for the BEAD program. The Infrastructure Act does not, however, contain equivalent language allowing such funds to be used toward the federal match, the non-federal match in the middle mile program. Next, we'll cover uses of funding. IRU costs are eligible under the Middle Mile Grant Program, provided they meet the definition of middle mile infrastructure. Middle mile infrastructure is defined as A, means any broadband infrastructure that does not connect directly to an end user location, including an anchor institution, and B, includes leased dark fiber, interoffice transport, backhaul, carrier-neutral internet exchange facilities, carrier-neutral submarine cable landing stations, undersea cables, transport connectivity to data centers, special access transport, and other similar services. And 3, wired or private wireless broadband infrastructure, including microwave capacity, radio tower access, and other services or infrastructure for a private wireless broadband network, such as towers, fiber, and microwave links. When connecting to an existing end user location, such as a community anchor institution, or serve as a point of presence, qualify as an eligible expense in the Middle Mile Grant Program. Yes, the cost associated with establishing a point of presence at a community anchor institution would qualify as an eligible expense. And you'll find that on page 12 of the FAQs. Last in this section, what are the requirements for materials to be produced in the U.S.? All funds made available through the Middle Mile Grant Program for broadband infrastructure must comply with the Build America, Buy America Act. The Build America, Buy America Act requires that all of the iron, steel, manufactured products, and construction materials used in the project are produced in the United States unless a waiver is granted. You'll find that answer as well on page 10 and 11 of the FAQs that have been published. Next, we'll cover questions regarding the review and scoring process. What is the merit review and what criteria are assessed during merit review? During the merit review, objective reviewers will evaluate applications across 2 categories of criteria and calculate the resulting score. Number 1, project purpose and benefits. That's worth 60 points. It covers deploy to un- or underserved areas or improve affordability in existing markets is 20 points. Offer non-discriminatory interconnection in perpetuity where feasible is worth 10 points. Offer open access to the funded infrastructure in perpetuity, also worth 10 points. Provide other benefits, for example, redundancy, direct interconnect facilities, worth 10 points. Meet the community's needs and complete the project in a 2-year period, worth 10 points. That's a total of 60 points under the project purpose and benefits. Under the project sustainability criteria, worth 40 points. Organizational capability to complete the special project proposed is worth 5 points. Reasonableness of the applicant's proposed budget is worth 10 points. The project's fiscal sustainability beyond the award period is worth 10 points. And contribute to a non-federal cost share greater than 30% based on a sliding scale with points, 5 points for 30 to 40%, 10 points for 41 to 50%, and 15 points for greater than 50%. These objective merit reviewers are federal employees or non-federal personnel who have demonstrated expertise in the programmatic and technical aspects of the Middle Mile Grant Program. What is programmatic review and what criteria are assessed during programmatic review? The programmatic review includes NTIA asking applicants to submit additional information to confirm eligibility or merit review score, if applicable. Then NTIA calculates weighted scores. We will multiply the merit review times 1.0 times 1.8 to reflect the project's ability to, number 1, reduce end user prices, 2, reduce latency in remote or insular areas, 3, benefit priority area groups, 4, is benefit unserved areas or tribal lands, 5, connect unserved anchor institutions, 6, comply with select requirements, 7, demonstrate climate resilience, and 8, propose community benefit agreements. Next, how do tribal entities request a full or partial waiver of matching funds? A tribal government or native entity may request that the Assistant Secretary waive requirements such as matching funds. The Assistant Secretary may grant waivers in cases where a waiver would be necessary for the effective delivery and administration of middle mile grants to tribal governments, or the construction, improvement, or acquisition of middle mile infrastructure on trust land. A tribal government may certify that the areas for which the middle mile infrastructure is proposed are unserved or underserved. If it chooses to do so, it must provide a statement on tribal letterhead validating this claim with supporting information. The tribal government must also certify that it's not in a legally binding agreement with a broadband service provider committed to providing internet services at speeds of no less than 100 megabit downstream and 20 megabit upstream. Next, we'll cover application components and the process. Number one, can applicants submit tax returns in lieu of audited financial statements? The answer is no. As described in section 3.b.1.c of the NOFO, each applicant shall submit financial statements from the 3 prior fiscal years that are audited by an independent certified public accountant. If that applicant is not audited in the ordinary course of business, in lieu of submitting audited financial statements, it must submit unaudited financial statements from the 3 prior fiscal years and certify that it will provide financial statements from the 3 prior fiscal years that are audited by an independent certified public accountant by an NTA specified deadline. The Assistant Secretary will not approve any middle mile grant program award unless the Assistant Secretary determines that the documents submitted demonstrate the applicant's financial capability with respect to the proposed project. What sources will be accepted to define unserved or underserved areas? The definition of unserved or underserved areas in the statute in the Middle Mile Grant Program NOFO refer to the FCC's broadband data maps, referred to in the statute as the FCC fixed broadband map. NTIA will rely on those maps to the extent that they're available. If the FCC's broadband data maps are not available, NTIA and the applicants may use the most recent mapping data available as set forth in section 60401E3BI of the Infrastructure Act in connection with the application and review process. And public sector entities submit a bond in place of a letter of credit. The answer is no. Public entities may not submit a bond in lieu of a letter of credit. During the application process, each applicant must submit a letter from a bank meeting eligibility requirements consistent with those set forth in 47 CFR 54.804C2, committing to issue an irrevocable standby letter of credit in the required form to the applicant. The letter shall at a minimum provide the dollar amount of credit offered and the issuing bank's agreement to follow the terms and conditions of NTIA's model letter of credit. If an applicant needs assistance or additional clarification as to the required information needed to complete their letter of credit, they're encouraged to submit all questions to middlemile@ntia.gov. Applicants should pay close attention to the application requirements to avoid delays in review. Common curing mistakes include ineligible uses of funding, not meeting the required cost share minimum of 30%. Funding is not sufficient to complete the task outlined in the project. Costs are not reasonable, allowable, or allocable based on the scope of work. A detailed narrative is not provided for each cost in the budget narrative, or total federal budget amounts requested in Field 18 of SF 424 do not align to the number in SF 424C, the budget narrative, or the detailed budget justification. So best practices: ensure all that NTIA required forms, templates, and documents related to the applicant information have been uploaded or completed into the NTIA grants portal, including the certification of financial capability, pre-letter of credit, audited financial statements, historical financial statements, SF 424C, and the budget narrative, detailed budget justification, pro forma financial projection analysis, and yes, no on any other funding provided for this project. Lastly, please ensure that the budget is prepared in accordance with 2 CFR Part 200, Subpart E, 48 CFR Part 31. Additional resources about the Middle Mile Grant Program include visiting the internetforall.gov website, engaging with your state or territory regarding their plan to improve high-speed internet access. Submit questions to the middlemile@ntaa.gov address and attend any future WTIA webinars, including program-specific application guidance webinars for applicants. Thank you. We can now open the floor for questions.
All right, sorry about that. I was on mute. All right, thank you, Patrick, for that presentation. We will now move into the Q&A portion of today's webinar. So in addition to Pat, I would like to welcome Mike Thibodeau, Erika Cox, and Sarah Blue, all within our Middle Mile team to answer your questions today. We also have our colleagues, Ming and Darren, joining us from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, to help answer your questions. So again, thank you all for joining. We would like to ask that you continue to enter your questions using the Q&A function. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a Q&A box to submit all your questions. And so please do so using that function and not in the chat. So we don't want to miss them, and we want to get through as many as possible. And if there's anything we're unable to answer today, you're all welcome to join our Middle Mile office hours that occur throughout the end of September. So you may visit broadbandusa.ntia.doc.gov and click on upcoming events to register. We always encourage you to check out our website resources. In fact, our 4th round of Middle Mile FAQs is underway and should be available very, very soon. And lastly, you may continue to send your questions to middlemile@ntia.gov. So let's go ahead and get started. That presentation is pretty brief, so we can get through as many questions as possible today. So we can go ahead and address, so there was a question here about the character count for the national security section. Sarah or Mike, would you be able to provide clarification on the character count that increased?
Sure, Sarah, you want me to take that?
Yeah.
I will take it. A nod and a thumbs up. Wow, awesome, thank you. Yeah, everybody, thanks for joining us today. And if you had tuned in to one of the webinars that we had before, you remember that I said that the portal is going to be merciless and that there is a character count for each independent section. And although I did say it was merciless, we did hear some feedback from you, so we have increased the character counts overall. So what you will see live on the application as of last week is that the character counts have doubled. And specifically for national security, it should have been at 1,000 previously, and so it has doubled to 2,000. So to answer that particular question, it is at 2,000, it will stay at 2,000. If for some reason there's need for a longer narrative, please write and let us know, and we'll see what we can do. But for right now, all of the character counts have doubled. They will stay that way. We're not trying to trick you. We're just trying to be a little bit more merciful and allow for better applications. So let me know if that does not answer that.
That sounds great. Thank you, Mike. We can go ahead and address another question. So as we all know, the letter of credit has been a hot topic throughout the whole process. And so we have a question that the participant was curious to know what the purpose and desired outcome is of the letter of credit requirement, and what entity is the intended beneficiary of the letter of credit. In addition to that, they're curious to know what the purpose of the legal opinion are and the template legal opinions or draft language for an opinion available.
Sarah, those are excellent questions. Thank you. And Erika, if it's okay, I'll just begin with a little bit of context, and then maybe you can talk a little bit about the reason that we've got some of the reasons or some of the beneficiary stuff. I will say that the letter of credit is something that we've been talking about quite a bit. Like Sarah mentioned, join us on office hours Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:00 Eastern. We talk about these things. It's open mic. We can discuss it as long as you like. the reason, to be honest with you, as we always are, that we've got the letter of credit is because these are your tax dollars at work. We at NTIA, our goal is to be good stewards of American tax dollars. The objective is to deliver high-speed and affordable internet and make sure that everybody's using it. And middle mile will get us there, but in order to verify the financial, managerial, operational capabilities of the applicants who are applying, one of the steps to make sure that we are awarding the funds to an entity who will be able to deliver is this letter of credit. Arika, do you want to comment a little bit? I know that something else that's come up is just making sure everybody understands that the letter of credit and the letter from legal counsel, those two items are not necessary until an application is selected for award. At this time with the application, what we're looking for is like a pre-commitment kind of thing. But Arika, can you comment any more on the letter of credit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got it covered, right? So we're looking for letter of credit will only be required to those applicants that are actually awarded grants. And so to Sarah's point earlier, what we are looking for though is that you have a relationship with a bank and a bank that understands kind of the your financials and your can accurately do a risk assessment to provide that letter for you. So we're not asking for the letter of credit itself up front. We're asking for that only for those that are awarded a grant. Also accompanying the letter of credit, should you be awarded, we're asking for an opinion for legal counsel that clearly states in regards to Title 11 of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code that the bankruptcy court would not treat a letter of credit proceeds as property of the winning bidder's bankruptcy estate. You can actually see exactly what we're asking for in regards to what we're asking an attorney to provide an opinion on. And again, the reason for that is because there are entities that may be subject to bankruptcy proceedings or may have other financial implications that in working with banks and attorneys, they're much better suited, I think it's appropriate to say, than we are, Sarah, to kind of assess your financial landscape, for lack of a better term, and can, on your behalf, kind of certify for us where you are in terms of your financial standards. I don't know if that helps, Sarah, if that's what you were looking for, but.
Thank you, Arika. I think it's also worth mentioning, and for the person who asked that question, seriously, we have been talking about the letter of credit because we do recognize that there are eligible entities who are prohibited from providing a letter of credit. It might be a statutory reason. So if that's something that you'd like to talk about, please send an email to middlemile@ntia or come join us on the office hours and we can talk about this together. Thank you.
Thank you. And so in relation to the letter of credit, Sarah, are you able to clarify what amount does the letter of credit have to secure? And additionally, has the model letter of credit been published to the website yet?
It really is. It kills me to say no, we have not. We do talk about in the NOFO that we are going to publish this template letter of credit, and we have not done that. This template, we also describe in the NOFO, is based on the FCC's RDOF letter of credit. So if you do a Google on FCC RDOF letter of credit, you'll get a very good idea of what we're contemplating. So no, it is not posted. It will be there soon. We realize that that is a gap that we have currently. I'll also say that the letter of credit, and this is explained also in the NOFO, should be worth 25% of the amount of federal funding being requested. The middle mile program is a little bit different from the BEAD program. We actually have step down. So as you achieve various milestones in the middle mile program, you can renew your letter of credit to secure smaller and smaller amounts, but it begins with 25% of the amount of federal funding being requested.
And if I may, Sarah, I also saw that someone asked as well if we'd be providing a template for the attorney letter, and no, we won't. But again, if you look in the NOFO, it specifies exactly what we're looking for from your representative, a legal counsel. And if they have any questions, then of course they're welcome to contact us for clarity, but we normally don't provide templates for something like that. Your attorney should know exactly what kind of opinion letter needs to be written.
Sarah, and if I can say one more thing on the letter of credit, because another topic that's come up quite a bit, I've noticed we keep all of us, Mike and Sarah and Erika have all helped. And also shout out to our NIST colleagues, our grants office team who is on with us right now. Everybody's been pitching in to help answer what we call inquiries, these questions that are being sent into the middle mile at NTIA inbox. And something, just a couple of other topics that have come up. For example, in general on the middle mile NOFO, we talk about this idea of match, that we all know that the $1 billion that have been allocated for the middle mile program is going to be very oversubscribed. And I'll also say that one of the requirements of the middle mile grant program is that there is some kind of non-federal match. Pat talked about that. That could be cash, it could be in-kind contributions. We require 30% to begin with. I'd like to point out that we do also state in the NOFO that tribal governments, Native entities have the right to request a waiver of that match amount. I want to also say that the letter of credit at 25% is an entirely different issue. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that there's no automatic waiver because of the type of entity that you are on that letter of credit requirement for 25%. If you would like to talk more about the letter of credit, again, join us on the office hour because this is probably one of the most talked about things these days.
Thanks, Sarah. Those are some great clarification points on that. So switching gears a little bit, regarding community anchor institutions, I think I can put this question towards Mike's way. So just a clarification, is the applicant expected to be the broadband provider to all community anchor institutions within 1,000 feet of the middle mile route?
Thanks, Sarah. So let me scroll towards that. We do actually have an FAQ that answers this, but the short answer is no, you are not expected to be the provider, although there's nothing to prohibit you from doing so. And I'll bring up the actual FAQ number, but let me read from it. So each applicant seeking to build the middle mile infrastructure, and my screen just scrolled, upon completion, will include direct interconnection facilities that will facilitate the provision of broadband service. So again, if you've been with us a little bit ago, we did have one day a game of password with how do you facilitate facilities? And if you can have facilitation of facilities that facilitate certain things that are being facilitated. But the purpose of that is basically that you can facilitate that, but you are not necessarily going to be the provider. So it's offering that interconnection.
So in other words, you don't have to, you're not being funded to build into the community anchor institution, but you're making it possible for a last mile provider to come in. And I'm never going to use that word facilitate in my life ever again, Mike. Thank you.
Or the other version is you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So it's like you can offer something that it does not need to be accepted.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you both. And we have a participant that mentions that they understand that laterals to anchor institution are not considered a middle mile for the purpose of this program. Can such laterals be used as in-kind match?
Everybody knows that I've got an opinion on everything. So if there's anybody else who wants to pick that up, please. I will say that in-kind contributions should be something that are allowable for the middle mile project. So if the lateral is, I would just make sure that any kind of in-kind contributions is something that we could point back to the middle mile purpose, which is to serve everything but community anchor institutions and households. Erika or Mike or Darren, do you have anything to add to that?
Sarah, I think you mostly covered it. I will direct everybody to FAQ 2.8, where we do go over what are the in-kind contributions. If that does not answer it, please let's please refine the questioning and we'll get you a better answer.
We also have a specific inquiry here that the applicant plans to repurpose existing conduit for public middle mile dark fiber use. So would that be an allowable in-kind contribution towards the match requirement?
We will expect applicants to be able to demonstrate that anything that's being suggested as an in-kind contribution is part of the middle mile solution. If the conduit is part of, or the dark fiber or whatever the case might be, if it can be demonstrated that that is that in the application.
Thanks, Sarah. Let's see, I'm just going through a few questions here. Related to the middle mile grant portal, a viewer is asking what the level of need narrative consists of. Anyone can take this, very open and broad.
One place that I would point applicants to make sure that you're aware is that we've got the application guidance document. When you go to the internetforall.gov website and go to the programs and then enabling middle mile, there we have got there's the NOFO that's posted there, there's the FAQs that are posted there, and there's also a link to the application guidance and the zip file of all the templates that are contained within the application. I'm not trying to skirt around providing an answer. The reason that I'm pointing you there is because it's a pretty lengthy explanation of what we're looking for in the level of need narrative, and I don't want to miss anything. So please go take a look at the application guidance and see if that helps.
Thanks, Sarah. We also have a few inquiries here. Curious about the post-award process. So would there be a period of discussion or negotiation to refine the project scope, or is it just an award of the project submitted and the project just starts right on the timeline? Erika, I think I see you unmuted here.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Oh, okay.
Is our Darren and Ming are with us, right?
Yes.
Ming, do you want to talk about the stacks and the post award and how that begins?
Sure. Yeah. I can generally provide some information about a post award management. So basically, when the application is submitted and obviously go through the merit review and review process, once your application is selected and awarded, obviously that's the statement of work and the budget is approved. That's the the statement of work and the budget you need to go by. In any case that there is any change during the post award, that will require prior approval, specifically like you have changed to the budget that exceeds the threshold that require prior approval, and also the statement of work that was approved, if they deviate from the statement of work, that also require prior approval from both the program office and the grants office. Any official approval will come directly from the grants office, either in writing, either in a administrative change letter or in amendment of the award. So, I would try to, pay very close attention to what your proposal submitted. And if anything deviate from that, I would definitely, if you're not sure, talk with your federal program officer and talk with your grant specialist assigned to that award. to discuss what you need to do in terms of getting the revised budget or the revised scope approved. Hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Ming.
Thanks, Ming. I see Mike has his hand raised.
Yeah, Sarah, just going back, and thank you, Ming, for that. Going back to what Sarah was saying, directing people to page 42 on the application guidance. It's going to be section 1.2 for the level of need. There's about 3 paragraphs in there, kind of describing, and then underneath that on page 43, there's several bullets. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a one size fits some. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody, and depending upon the service area. So there is no exact template or formula there. It's what your business plan would look like.
Thank you, Mike. One other thing that I would mention when we go back over, when we talk about the post award, is remember in your application for everybody, if you haven't taken a look at the application guidance, or if you haven't been into the application portal yet, one of the questions that we ask you about is the environmental, it's called the environmental narrative. Yesterday in our office hour, we were joined by one of our FirstNet colleagues who spoke extensively about the environmental and historic policies and the processes that we have in place within the Department of Commerce to do the, this NEPA work. And the reason I say that is because in the environmental narrative, you are asked to provide Google Earth images of what you're building up through. You're asked to talk about the area that you're building through. If it's some kind of material that is porous, then you're asked to describe the method of construction that you're using, for example, and how it is that this method is proven to be resistant or withstand those types of environmental conditions. I talk about that because it is very important. We are going to, actually yesterday in the office hour, Amanda shared with everybody a CADX checklist, and there's also an environmental assessment that if you you can find on the Department of Commerce website. Doing all of that NEPA work is really important. And one of the things that Ming and Darren and our grants office colleagues do within NIST is helping us with these specific award conditions. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that NEPA part of it, looking at the environmental narrative, understanding what it is that you're trying to build, and if there is going to be any impact to the environment. Like look there, you can look at FEMA floodplains, for example. There are a bunch of tools that are available that you can, so that you'll be able to scan what it is that you're building across and whether or not there might be any concerns. And in this specific award condition that Ming and Darren and the team help us with, we will want to make sure that we have a good understanding. Are you going to be categorically excluded from this, or do you have to get some kind of environmental assessment? I want to make sure, that NEPA part of it, it's if you've got experience requesting federal funding from the Department of Commerce before, then you have some familiarity with this. It can take a bit of time to get through that. And generally speaking, there won't be any construction or shovels in the ground until this NEPA work is completed. So I just wanted to make sure that we did a shout out on that. Thank you.
That's some great information. Thanks, Sarah. And so switching gears here a little bit, a viewer is a little bit concerned about the security and timelines and different pieces of sensitive information. And so they're curious to know how much of the application might be public. And I think Erika is available to answer this question.
Sure, and that's a good question. It comes up a lot, actually. In section, I think it's section 8 of the NOFO, I would read that section really well. We talk about our commitment to transparency, but also our commitment to protect sensitive information, right? And so we give very specific instructions there. So if there's information and or data that you consider proprietary, confidential, or it's financial information, or privileged information for that matter, you consider it so. In that section, we tell you how to mark it. You know, you bracket it, you mark it privileged, confidential, sensitive, whatever that is. And what that does is it flags us to be able to review it, your request to comply under the guise of the law, right? So that we can determine if under the law, we are prohibited from releasing that information. Now, I will say this kind of just generally, this is not, written in stone, but generally, if it's financial information, if it's something we can easily tell that is proprietary and it's marked as such, generally it is not released. We do also say in the NOFO to make sure that you, in your executive summary, we caution you to just make sure that you are scrubbing your executive summary and not putting that information in there, because your executive summary actually can be used from a project description standpoint for folks to kind of understand in general what your project is about, and that information can be published. So just be very careful. I'd encourage you to read section 8. And also know, because people are sometimes concerned about FOIA requests and things of that nature. Again, if you mark your information as such, it flags us so that when we review it, we can make sure that we're paying special attention there, number one. But number two, you're often given an opportunity if, say, that information is requested. We don't just release it on our own accord, right? We would go back to you and have conversation about what material under the law we're eligible or able to, I should say, redact. So read section 8, and if you have any more questions on that, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you, Eureka. That was very detailed and very important, so thank you. And so I see a question that the participant would like to seek clarification on the negotiated indirect cost rate agreement. And I believe we have an FAQ out on it, but either Sarah or Mike or anyone, would you be able to provide more detail about that?
What kind of clarification is the person looking for?
On the negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, they would just like a general overview of what it is and why we ask for it.
Excuse me, Eureka, I don't have the de minimis language off the top of my head. Is that something that you're comfortable talking about?
So is the person asking that question, I mean, can they chime in here to give us a little bit more detail? Because indirect costs is kind of a big, it covers a lot, right? So does somebody want to give more clarity? And we've also got Ming and Darren. I know that they can help us too with some of the details, right? If you don't have an indirect cost rate, right, and you're not subject by, Darren, Ming, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's subpart E of the 2 CFR 200, there is that 10% de minimis rate if you're not a state or a tribal territory, or you have not negotiated an indirect cost rate, that you can use that 10% de minimis rate. But I'm not sure what else the questioner is looking for there in terms of negotiated rates.
Thank you to Rika. I can probably just add a little bit to what you just mentioned there. Generally, an organization, if they have overhead and the negotiated indirect cost rate basically to cover some of the costs that share among projects, that is basically cover the overhead of the organization. Some organizations that do not have an indirect cost negotiated indirect cost rate with the federal government, then the NOFO allows that if you do not currently have approved indirect cost rate agreement, you can actually use a 10% de minimis rate that is allowed under section 214F. Basically says the applicant that do not currently have a negotiated indirect cost rate, including a provisional rate, may elect to charge indirect costs to the award pursuing to the de minimis rate 10% of the modified total direct cost. So basically, if you don't have a current negotiated rate, you are allowed to apply the 10% de minimis rate. However, the cost must be consistently charged, either direct or indirect cost, but may not be double charged inconsistently. And when you apply the 10%, it has to be applied to all federal awards that you have applied consistently, not just not switching one award from the other. So if you do not have a negotiated rate, then you are eligible to use the 10% and it has to be applied consistently throughout all the awards.
Thank you, Ming.
Thank you. We have a question regarding the employment and labor law compliance sections. Is there any specific documentation you're looking for related to employment and labor law compliance?
I think that all we can really say here, there's a whole bunch of initiatives. I call them initiatives. There's a whole bunch of sections in the NOFO. There's the compliance with civil laws, there's workforce development, there's highly skilled labor, there's climate resilience. I mean, talk about that for a second. There's a lot that we ask for in the middle mile application. I can't provide more guidance. We cannot provide more guidance than what is in the application document or the language that you see in the portal. What we have suggested is that if you've got the experience building projects, operating, managing, overseeing the deployment, construction, the management of a project in similar scope and size, then describe for us, demonstrate for us in the narratives, the processes you have in place, the governance that you've got in place in order to make sure that these things are adhered to. Talk about what it is that you're doing, point to the processes, point to your track record, to your successes. We will be looking for qualified facts to see what it is that you have in place and what it is that you have done when undertaking a project of similar scope and size.
And I would just, if I may add to that, Sarah, the person asked for specifics. To Sarah's point, we are very specific in some of those sections about what particular certifications from officers we may be looking for, what sort of written disclosure. So I would encourage you to read those sections again, because there is information in there that gives you some specifics on what we're looking for.
Thank you, Rika.
Perfect. We have quite a few questions coming in about eligible costs. And a participant's curious to know if an applicant can purchase a maintenance agreement for the equipment needed to install the middle mile network. Will NTIA cover the cost of a maintenance agreement through the life of the award?
Ming, if somebody bought, let's say that somebody bought, and I'm making things up, but box A that cost $500,000 and maintenance for box A was going to cost $100,000 over 5 years. Is that an eligible expense in the program? Or Darren?
Yeah, sure. Generally, maintenance costs to equipment and building, the upkeep of building equipments, that including federal, properties, unless otherwise provided. The maintenance cost is allowable to charge to the award. So only to the extent that is paid through, some kind of rental agreement or some kind of agreement that is in place. So generally speaking, yes, maintenance cost is allowable to charge to the award for upkeeping of equipment and maintenance and buildings.
And I want to also shout out that one of the things that and Ming reminds me of this is we're not going to want to see like just one big fat number showing equipment and maintenance. We will expect you to break it down. That's in the detailed budget justification. We want you to break down line by line every cost that you're submitting that you believe is eligible for this application. Please do not give us one round number.
Yes, and also want to add to Sarah's point is that, generally the maintenance costs that are incurred within the period performance, those are allowable. Anything beyond outside the period performance would not be allowable to the award.
Thank you, Ming.
Regarding details in the budget, so how much detail is expected given that an applicant may be assuming that some network designs do not yet exist? So how is an applicant aware of the cost of supplies and labor as it stands right now?
I without understanding the full context and Mike, I know that I keep like just talking, so please chime in and say, Sarah, stop talking so much.
I'm not going to sing this time.
Okay. Okay. I would say a couple of things. We definitely need the details. We understand that you might not have crews on staff already or something like that. If you have done something of a similar project scope and size, you've constructed, you've managed, you've operated any of those things, you would be able to have a sense for you might demonstrate that you have a sense for how many people are going to be required to do the work, how many hours it might take. You should be able to estimate those kinds of things, and we would expect to see that kind of a breakdown in the detailed budget justification. There's also the budget narrative where you have your opportunity to explain in words, to detail in words those numbers that we will see in the detailed budget justification. So that's what I would say about those couple of items. We are looking for the details. Understanding you might not have hired or bought anything, but based on the experience that you've demonstrated that you have, what do you forecast this would look like?
Yeah, I would just add like any historicals that you have from a planning purposes, all fair and game with the, with the notes and caveats. We've all seen, price whiplash, everywhere. So we do understand that there is going to be a margin of error, and that regionally, labor rates, rental rates, property, everything else does vary. And so it's very possible you could have two applications that look very different depending upon the area or region served.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Going back to funds used as match. So a question came in about American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds, and they're curious to know if the American Rescue Plan Act fiscal recovery funds can be used as a match for broadband grants.
Not on the middle mile project. It's written in the NOFO that other federal funds may not be provided as match unless explicitly called out by that other federal agency. And we have answered many times in these webinars that we cannot accept ARPA funds as a source of match for the middle mile program. I will call out that the BEAD program, the Broadband Equity and Access Deployment Program, there we do contemplate the ability to use some of those funds for match, but in the middle mile program specifically, you may not use ARPA funds for match.
Thanks, Sarah. And, are we able to share a best way or best practice to calculate equipment or other items used for the match requirement? Or is there like a formula that an applicant should be using?
I would say on that, something again that we've talked about on the office hours, that if seriously, the way that these office hours work is that you're able to just chime in like live and talk to us. And part of the beauty of something like that is that when you ask your question, you'll often find that there are a lot of other people who have similar questions. And this question of how to put a value on your in-kind contribution is a really good example of that. It's one that comes up a lot. And in fact, we convened with about 5 or 6 different organizations offline at one time. All NTIA can say is we have provided guidance that you should use fair market valuation when assessing the value of these in-kind goods and these in-kind contributions. But when you're with a group of people who everybody's got the same question in mind and you're able to hear one another brainstorm, talk it out, there's some beauty in that, I'll say. So fair market valuation is what we have suggested, and we will be evaluating your budgets, include the detailed budget justification, which includes the value of these in-kind contributions. to making sure that they are allowable, allocable, reasonable for the project.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. So a participant has a question regarding existing BTOP funded routes, and they're curious to know if upgrading the BTOP funded route is an eligible use within the middle mile program.
If you're an eligible entity and you can describe a level of need and you can meet the other requirements like providing the match, getting the letter of credit, talking about climate resilient, and there's a whole bunch of things that are required in this application. But if you have a level of need that you're able to describe, then you should take a look at at least take a look at the application guidance to see, based on the other questions that are there, is this something that you would like to pursue?
All right, thank you. And, you know, for the folks that might have joined late, there's a few questions regarding community anchor institutions. So going back to CAIs, is an applicant expected to include all community anchor institutions in the application? Do you have insight on to what they should include on that?
Mike, do you want to talk about the requirement if you're fiber-based to facilitate the facilitation of a community anchor institution?
You said you weren't going to use that word, so you just lost the password. Yeah, Sarah, I'm scrolling through trying to find the exact question, but in general, for the community anchor institutions, the requirement is if you're going to build out a fiber-based plant, then you must list the community anchor institutions that are within 1,000 feet of your build. And it's going to be a simple, what is the name of the institution, street address, et cetera, et cetera. They're outside of that, you do not have to list that. And outside of the wire, and if you're in wireless, you're not required. Although we do, we would like to know what kind of homework and research you've done as far as what community anchor institutions are there. And I would say that could also be part of your public and community outreach as well.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, I would also, I mean, I think that you're right. There's the community anchor institution template where we ask applicants to list the CAIs that they go past with this network. And there's the data submission template where we ask if you are actually providing an interconnect by that within 1,000 feet of that CAI, you would, that and any other interconnect point, you would list the lats and longs in a CSV file, right?
Yep.
Thanks.
Great, sounds good. And so let's see, just going through the questions here. Is our team able to provide insight on non-discriminatory terms and conditions? The participant asked, what is non-discriminatory terms and conditions?
That's a really good question. Because if you are suggesting fiber as your proposal in this middle mile project, then we do require, where technically feasible, that you make available open access and non-discriminatory carrier neutral access. And that means that anybody who wanted to buy wholesale access to your middle mile network, or anybody who wanted to interconnect with your network, where it's technically feasible, you permit that. I think the NOFO actually says in perpetuity. Mike or anybody else, do you have anything that you would add to that?
Sarah, your definition of perpetuity?
That's a tough question.
No, I mean, just insofar as the perpetuity, I mean, it's going to be is the lifetime of the system. We do not mean infinite, because obviously there is going to be decay and there's going to be change and replacement and whatnot. But Yeah, that's not a trick question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see a question here. We have a couple questions in our FAQs that we published about the process of how applications will be reviewed. Would someone like to answer, will each grant application be reviewed by an individual or a group of individuals? And can you walk us through the stages of an application review?
Yeah, if you, it's actually, it's detailed, I think, in a pretty insightful way in the NOFO, around page 30-ish, 30 to 35, something like that. There are 3 stages. There is initial review, and that will happen. So the application window will close at 11:59 p.m. Eastern on Friday, September 30th. There will not be any extensions. The portal will be closed. If your application is not in that portal and completed and submitted by 11:59 Eastern on the 30th, you have no other way to get in there. So that means, so that's a Friday. Then we begin the initial review with people back in the office on Monday. The initial review is done to verify, number one, that you're an eligible entity who has applied for the program. The initial review will also verify that your application is complete. One of the things that we talk, you will not be able to submit the application through the portal unless you have answered everything. But sometimes I know that I've made the mistake of accidentally uploading a picture of my children to a file upload instead of uploading my resume. And I didn't get the job, but sometimes things like that happen. Sometimes people make mistakes. And so in initial review, we're making sure that you're eligible, that you've completed. And other things, like, for example, it's a confusing application. Like, let's talk about the number of times that we ask you to tell us how much money you're asking for, because there's the 424, the standard form 424, there's the standard form 424C, there's a detailed budget justification, and there's the budget narrative. And what we expect of you is that in each of those documents, the numbers match each and every single time. And depending how complex, how large your project might be, sometimes that's difficult to keep straight. So in initial review, we're going to say, we have a list of what, like how many times is the budget appear, and how many verifying that the budget is actually correct in all 4 places. As a result of initial, you might be notified that there are a list of deficiencies on your application. That notification is going to go to the person you designate on your SF 424 as the AOR. That person and the day-to-day contact on the 424 are going to receive a list of these deficiencies that must be cured in their entirety within 7 days. This is described in the NOFO, and it is imperative that you keep an eye on your email and respond. So I would say the first half of October, the whole month of October, be looking out for an email from NTIA. You must respond in its entirety if there are any deficiencies that need to be cured on your application. If you do not, your application, you might be deemed as unresponsive. And if you are deemed as non-responsive, then there's the chance that you don't go on into merit review. Merit review is the second stage of the reviews. And there we have, and this also is described, Pat talked about it. And Pat, I don't know, I'm going to put you on the spot, but do you want to talk a little bit more about the merit review and the 3, we've got 3 reviewers, and can you break down the points in the NOFO as we describe merit review? I think 60% of it is project purpose and benefits. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to look for the document right now.
Oh,
if you want
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry. I did say that I would not do that.
Well, hang on just a second. I think I have it up.
We've got, I know, and Pat can help us with the details, but there's 100 points total in merit review. 3 merit reviewers are going to look at your application. They've got questions. 60% of those points go to project purpose and benefits. 40% go to the budget, including the fiscal sustainability. And I think what Pat's pulling up for us now are the details behind the 60 and the 40.
I'm trying to find in the document we went through yesterday or today. Project purpose and benefit. That's the NOFO. Give me just a second. I'm still. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sorry. I completely.
No, you've got.
Okay.
Skip and let me come back to it. Let me
Okay.
come
Okay.
back.
Okay. It is in the NOFO. One of the reasons that it's really important to be aware of that and to be thinking of that is because you get points. We actually break down for you in the NOFO how many points you get for each part of the merit review that we're looking at. So for example, if you provide more than 50% match, you can get 15 points on that particular point. If you have a timeline that demonstrates honestly that you are going to be able to complete that this project is shovel ready and that you will be able to complete it in 2 years, there are extra points that will be given during the merit review at that point. We take the average of the three, the merit reviewers are going to look at you, they're going to give you a number of points, they're going to write down strengths and weaknesses, and then we're going to take an average of the 3 scores in merit review. If your application across those 3 reviewers averages 80 or above, and you meet 2 of the 5 statutory criteria, then you will be prioritized into programmatic review. And in programmatic review, that's where, again, we're going to check one last time on, we're going to, as the federal program officers, take a look at your eligibility, make sure that you've met the minimum qualifications. And then in the NOFO, we describe there's 8 weighting criteria that we will be looking at in the programmatic review. And not everybody's going to get all 8. It's not designed to be given. I mean, there's showing a significant improvement in latency is one of the weighting factors. Not everybody's going to be looking at latency across these applications. There are a ton of socioeconomic benefits that are described. There's, if you are crossing tribal lands, that is one of the weighting factors. There's climate resilience is one of the weighting factors. Based on how you demonstrate answers to those areas in your application, your average merit score is going to be differentiated or multiplied by one of these by this multiplier weighting factor. So you could get either up to 8 times based on your ability to demonstrate compliance with each of those areas. And then after all of that, then you are ranked by the number of points, and then we begin selection of the awards. So points, earning points is really, whereas in other programs like broadband infrastructure program, for example, the objective was the greatest number of households that could be served. What we're looking for on the middle mile program is based on all the merit review points, based on the programmatic points, those applications that earn the most points until we run out of funds.
You did that off the top of your head. There's nothing I can add to that.
Well, it's not fair for me to say. Sorry. You can add.
That was a great
Okay.
walkthrough.
So indeed, Sarah has attached a photograph of her family instead of a resume. And although it's a very beautiful family, including the dog, no hard feelings, Sarah. Yeah, but please make sure you don't do that because there has been questions as to who can authorize and submit the application. So no third parties, and the officer of the entity, an officer of the entity is, you're going to be certifying that everything that you've submitted is valid and legitimate. So unless your family is, say, in an organizational chart area, and that is indeed your management team, just be sure to review everything because you are putting your signature, your stamp of approval on that. And although we would probably enjoy like your favorite barbecue recipe or something like that, again, not really part of the application.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh,
So,
actually,
so in the event,
I was just going to say for the FAQ
Sorry.
for that, that's question 4.1. It does go over the process, and in the NOFO, I believe it's page 33, 34, on the next few pages down.
so in the event a barbecue recipe is inserted in the organizational chart area, would curing and communications be done through email in the portal? What does the communications look like to cure an application?
That person has I like your sense of humor. Actually, and as a matter of fact, your ears must have been burning because we were just talking about the curing communications today. What will happen is there should be one comprehensive list. There will be a comprehensive list that comes out that says, here is everything. It will effectively open up you will be given the opportunity to open up the portal. We will open up those specific fields that need to be cured. You will be asked to cure for those items, and that's it, period, end of story. And that will happen that should happen within the 7 days. So you will be given the opportunity to go back into the portal and open up these fields, or these fields will be open for you, and you'll be told specifically what it is that has to be done.
Awesome, thanks, Sarah. And we have a few quick questions that I'd like to just run through. Is there a technical assistance person to assist in opening and submitting middle mile grant applications? Do we have a technical assistance person that an applicant will be assigned to go through the application?
We do not have a TA person for an applicant. We have an NGP help desk at NTIA email, where you can open up a trouble ticket if you're having difficulty. Do please, this is not grants.gov. This is a new portal application intake system that we have worked on. You can only go to the internetforall.gov website, go through their the middle mile web, program and create the application there. You're going to get a new login and you'll get a password and all that stuff. If you have any difficulty, there's the email there, NGP help desk at NTIA, where you can ask for help. I strongly encourage everybody to be in there and understanding how to get in, take a look at everything that is required. Today is September 14th. You've got about 2.5 weeks to get your application in. It is going to take some time. That's why we made the zip file with all the templates, so people would have the opportunity to kind of work offline and begin thinking about these things. But it is a learning curve for everybody. It will take, there will be some fumbles. So I strongly urge you, as much as you can, start getting in there today if you haven't been in there already, so that you have no difficulty hitting submit before 11:59 Eastern. That's the PM on September 30th. And Macy, thank you for adding that email, the NGP helpdesk at ntia.gov.
Thank you. And I'll steer the next couple of questions towards Mike's way. Are electronic signatures acceptable for the certifications outlined in the application?
Thanks, Sarah. So I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to check with my attorney. So as long as we have the electronic signature that is attached to or connected with the certification in question, then I'm going to say yes. But an electronic signature just sitting by itself is not going to be sufficient. So if you're saying that your company, your entity, your organization has the technical capability for the technical capability certification, it must say, yes, we, entity name or applicant name, have the technical capability, wet signature, electronic signature, signed by officer of that organization. Did I lie on that? Any corrections you want to make, Eureka?
Got it.
Okay. Score 1 for me.
All right.
This is really, I just want to shout,
And,
this is like really super duper huge team effort. Mike, thank you for help. Mike's joined the team. It's important to all of us at NTIA that you who are applying know that we are all human beings on the other end of this, and we have a team of people here to support you and answer your questions. So Mike's here. Sarah's part of our team, that she's filling in as moderator right now, but she's been a tremendous part of our team. Pat Carroll, who I put on the spot. That was really rude and crude of me, and I'm sorry, Pat, but I appreciate you getting on here and talking about the program. And Arika, who keeps us safe and compliant, and Ming and Darren from the grants office. There's just a whole bunch of people here who are trying to field your questions and answer in a way so that you're able to successfully submit applications. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate the shout out. And so the next question, quick question that came up, is there a copy available for the entire application for offline review? And would that include the attachments? Do we have a document there?
Sarah, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, we have been making small modifications to the application, but as I know it right now, there is no way to print an entire, what I'm going to call pre-submitted application for review. But I will go and double check that to see if there's any other way, because I did not have a workflow process for that. However, when you do submit, you will get a copy of the entire bundle of the application, including the attachments for record keeping. But prior to that, the review is going to be on the individual narrative and document basis. So you will be able to see the documents within the application portal themselves. You'll be able to see the narratives, but not a separate printout prior. And I will come back and make sure that that is indeed the case.
And I mean, the purpose of doing the application guidance document was to give you, take a look at that. It's a big fat document, more pages than I care to remember, but something like 80 pages. And there's a good chunk of it that includes screenshots of the portal application itself and how to get a login. There's instructions there. And then it goes into, there are 3 sections of the application: the applicant, the technical or project, and the budget or financial part. The application guidance document goes through each question. And like Mike said, for example, we just recently in the last week doubled the amount of characters that we are permitting in the narratives, and the application guidance document might not reflect that latest tweak. But the screenshots, the questions, it's all good. So if you have not been able to get into the application and you want to get a sense for the gravity, not the gravity, but the complexity, the largesse of this application, go to the internetforall.gov website, take a look at enabling middle mile, go to the application guidance download. There you will find this PDF of about 80 pages, as well as a zip file that contains all of the templates that are required, that range from, example, the detailed budget justification template to the CD511 that you will have to submit with the application. We also provide in that zip file an example of the standard form 424 and the 424C. Those 2 standard forms are built into the application itself, but we've given you copies offline so that you can fill it in on your own time. And when you go into the portal, just key it all in. So there is a way, if you're like me, and I like to just think about things for a long time and play with it before actually committing, then there's a way to do that. Go take a look at the application guidance in the zip file that contains all the templates.
And Sarah, it's 88 pages. I'm going to try and keep it under 89.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. And I guess we can go ahead and take one last question while we have our whole NTIA and NIST review team here. A question came in about, so specifically this participant asks, if they have a number of sub-projects across geographies, does NTIA and NIST review them and want to weigh in on the list and prioritize them with the applicant? Or is a project award in all or nothing scenario?
I will say that this is a competitive program, so we're not going to weigh in and comment on how favorable one particular project looks over another. We're only going to be evaluating projects after they've been submitted. And I'll also say that you have the ability to submit one big giant project, or you can submit many projects. Mike, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just along similar lines, right? So as Sarah was saying before, if you want to, sit back and take a look at the various point scoring, there is going to be a calculus there that could change based upon, again, the various regions, geographies, level of need, you name it, it may vary that score. So if it makes more sense to have the larger project, make it the larger project. If it makes more sense to divide the projects, divide the projects. Knowing though that if you divide the projects, those projects are competing against one another as well, right? But with the going back to the proverbial, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. If there's a part of your project, if you're looking at it and you're questioning it, then chances are we will look at it and question it. So it's like you may have, arbitrarily speaking, 2 really solid areas and a third we're not really sure. Then again, you may decide, okay, well, let's look at this on an individual basis or start chunking and prioritizing that yourself. But we won't be able to comment on that.
All right, thank you, team. Are there any last items anyone would like to highlight, or questions that they think should be addressed in today's webinar before we close out for the day? Final comments?
I am a little bit surprised that nobody asked about Build America, Buy America, because that is one of the requirements that's talked about in the NOFO. And if you do have any, I mean, that it's there that 55% of manufactured content, according to Build America, Buy America, must be made in the U.S. of the components, or 100% of construction material. We've been talking to all of you for a long time, and we understand the what's not available here, what are hardships. I do want to make sure everybody's clear that the general blanket kind of approaches to waivers that you might have seen a long time ago with BTOP, for example, do not expect to see that here. But we should be able to provide some guidance with you shortly before you get your application in, if you have any concerns about the Build America, Buy America requirement. At the end of the day, we all want to bring jobs here. And we should have some better guidance for you in the next couple of days.
And Sarah, I would just add as well, kind of reinforcing what Sarah Blue had mentioned before. If you have any other questions regarding the application itself, the content itself, please keep the questions coming to middlemile@nta.gov. If there are questions or issues regarding the portal, those questions go to the grants portal that Macy posted, the NGP help desk. Think of those two as very distinct and separate entities. So we have that. There are a couple of changes in the application that are being pushed through. The character count should be through. There's a couple of other cosmetic items, so just watch for that. And the application guidance will be updated along with that. It's not major. It's just that there may be a couple of things in there that have changed subtly. But yes, there are updates that are coming. And please don't wait until 11:59 on September 30th. Adjust your time frame accordingly. We don't know how many people are going to be, we don't know how many applications are going to be submitted. And if everybody waits till the last minute, not necessarily a good thing.
Thank you, Mike. And join us for the office hours. You can ask as many live questions as you want. We're going to have a whole bunch of people there supporting you Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:00 Eastern. Details on the internetforall.gov website under webinars. Everybody welcome.
Thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in today. And our colleagues from NIST, I know we're a little bit over time, but any final parting comments before we close out today?
I think Mike kind of touched on it. Don't wait till the last minute to start your application. Start early if you can. Read through the NOFO and the FAQs. That answers a good majority of the questions. And, just don't wait till the last minute. I'll say it again.
Thank you. Lastly, we always encourage you to please continue to send us your questions to middlemile@ntia.gov. Continue to check out our website, and we will all talk with you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, Sarah.